This is an address directed towards our body of belief and the diet of our consciousness. So the first thing to bring to the surface is that we are comprised mostly of water. In the higher percentiles are 70 billion cells that are operating, moving around within our form. Our organs, our skeletal system, our nervous system, our skin, the totality of our body is comprised mostly of water. And the second part to take note is that water holds memory. That's why we have cellular memory and genetic memory, which is very important. That water has and does contain memory. We carry cellular memory in our body as it is comprised of water, mostly water. And I will come back to this later in my address. Now, observing the diet of the human race in 2022 and the structure of this reality, which is another very important statement of this reality, is that we have the sun and we have water and the earth, and they comprise the three parts that come together to create life or sustenance of nutrition or diet. And at the very top you'll see the sun, and at the very bottom you will find the greenery, the grass, the hay, the foods that can be digested by the animals, the livestock that have been domesticated as food for humans. So the cows are supposed to be out grazing on the field, and the chickens are eating their grains, and grass is running free. And the animals, by their real nature in wild, before their domestication, would have been consuming natural provided greenery that was grown from the earth, given water from the rain, and given life and growth through the digestion of the sunlight. And then the animal would consume it and give itself sustenance. Then we, above that scale, when we're just observing as an observation of the diet on our planet, is that we come into the realms of vegetables, legumes, and leafy greens. And these are consisting of a denser quality than the grasses that the cows and animals are eating. When we look at carrots or root-based potatoes, things that are growing inside of the earth and that are later dug out and then consumed. And then we have the leafy greens, which consist mostly of water again, that are above ground. And then we get into the varying varieties of what we call fruits. Some fruits can be described as zucchinis or tomatoes. And then we get into what we normally consider fruits as apples and mangoes and papayas and pineapples and all the wonderful fruits on the planet, that they hang above the ground, or they're sitting above the ground, and they consume the light of the sun, water, and their roots are in the earth. And then above that and within it, we have certain of the nuts and seeds that they too are hanging in the sun, and the root of the tree or the brush is in the earth. And then above that scale, we get into chlorophyll. We get into spirulina that's growing on the top of water itself, that can then be extracted and consumed. And then at the very top, we get into the actual light of the sun. And that's just a quick, and it's not a perfect expression of the scale of food, but it's to bring to make an address pertaining to our diet and our body of belief, and our state of consciousness within our diet. Now, when we examine today's reality with looking at where a lot of the population is consuming, we find that we still are consuming flesh protein at the store through chicken, pork, lamb, and beef. And these animals, for the most part, are not outside roaming the grasslands. They're bred in conditions where they're not digesting food that they're not digesting food that has seen sunlight or that has grown from the earth. They're eating processed foods that have been manufactured and processed to feed the livestock. And a lot of the cows, they don't eat grass. They eat corn and other things that a cow would never be able to get in a natural setting, would never graze upon. Now, this is not a address pertaining to get into animal conditions. It's to bring awareness to the reality of our diet as a species. Now, as I said in the beginning, is that our body is mostly water, and it has cellular memory, and so does the bodies of other beings on the planet, whether they be other human beings or whether they be sentient beings within the animal kingdom. Their body too is comprised of a large percentage of water, and that is also why, if you look at how much water it takes to grow livestock, you'll see that they too are consuming water, and how much water are they digesting through the grass that they're supposed to be roaming on. When you look at an animal that's spending most of its day roaming on grasslands, it's spending most of its day consuming a mostly water soluble solid as the grass. And now, when we look at the cellular memory, we have to recognize that there is a memory of not being out in the open, being in a small pen or a small cage, being around over condensed area of other beings, and living in a state of franticness or anxiety, and also in many cases being treated illy by the people that are caretaking them, or not caretaking for them at all, just allowing them to be in their own filth or their own feces, and given antibiotics to prevent them from having infection or different illnesses from their living conditions, not to not for to stop them from something foreign, but to stop something that would be inherent coming from their environment of being in the condition that they're living in. And now these animals are then brought to slaughter for food consumption, and they're brought through this process of fear and their conditions of their reality. And so as we carry our cellular memory, so too do these animals. So it's not a debatable subject, it's a reality to say that the flesh that then comes from those animals to later be cooked and consumed carries with it the cellular memory of the life that these animals have bared for others to consume, to continue their experience of belief that they need to then consume these animals in these states of condition in order to carry on with their own life. And most of the community, and the doctor community and scientific have pushed forward that you have to have milk for calcium, you need the flesh protein for iron and B12. These are common belief systems within our reality. And now a point to also take here is that if you look at a silverback gorilla, you will recognize that it has the power to rip off limbs off of a human being, and it does not consume any flesh protein. It is strictly a vegetarian or a fructivore. It's consuming fruits and greenery. It's just a point of looking at belief that in our reality there are these beings that are extremely powerful and extremely large, and horses as well, and bulls that are extremely powerful and majestic animals, that they are not sustained by the flesh of other sentient beings. It's just a place to note within what I'm trying to address here. The next layer in human conception is the vegetables and legumes, as I stated before. And if we're looking at these things within vibratory states, you can envision that we're moving from the denser gross plane of physical matter, and then moving through the vegetables and into leafy greens and then into fruits that we can see by investigating their water content, that when we get into fruits like watermelon, pineapple, leafy greens, certain fruits and leafy greens, they're extremely high in water content. They're in the 80s to 90s. Now that would clearly demonstrate that it's moving closer to our actual body content, which is mostly water. And then above that, above the water content, you would be moving into the light of the sun. And now without the light of the sun, or without the water, or without the roots connected to the earth, the fruit or the vegetation it won't have enough vital life force. That's very key to reproduce itself and sustain its growth. And now we come into a state of consciousness and a state of belief, and where we acknowledge a body of belief. And this is irrelevant if the scientific community recognizes it as a possibility or not. The state, examining the state of consciousness, is to again reflect upon very much a dream state, that when you reflect upon your dream states, you have a body. And when you examine the lives of beings that are no longer in this plane of reality, that have, as we use the term, transitioned, they too have a body, and they too are in a reality of experience. And although we may not be perceptive of their body, we know through people that have had out-of-body experiences, people that have had visions of other realities, and people that have seen with their own eyes the manifestation of form from interdimensional, multidimensional beings. And we can correlate that, which some may believe or not, to also our own personal dreams, that within our dreams we have a body and other people have bodies, and we have sensations within those realities. And upon awakening, where has that reality gone? It is of utmost importance when examining our state of consciousness as a collective life that is living upon a aware, conscious world or reality that is holding the collective awareness of belief throughout our sphere of reality. Now, one can take note that throughout the ages and still currently today, there are many documented cases of beings that no longer consumed food or water. And now, whether one believes it or they adhere to it being possible is irrelevant. It's been documented and presented to the world, not merely as a possibility, but in fact of ascetic beings moving away from food consumption and moving into bodies of belief, where you would find beings that say that the Divine Mother provides for them, or that, as it's stated in the Bible, that man liveth not by bread alone. And also there's a quotation in there that did not your forefathers eat manna in the desert? And I do believe the secondary part in the Bible was changed, that they did not pass away, but that they did live in the desert off of manna. Also we have a lot of beings that remember the earth at other stages in its evolution and experience of expression, where we were breatharians and we were living primarily off of the light that was within us, not coming from outside of us. Now, to capture and express what I would like to share pertaining to our diet is that our body is the house of what some may call the Holy Ghost, or Brahman, or Shiva, or energy, consciousness, regardless of what name you give to it. It is the conscious awareness, the presence that is within oneself and within all external forms. And the direction I would like to bring to this is that if I pose it as a question, if that is correct, and our consciousness is inwardly experiencing itself as a reality and then experiencing itself externally, then we need to examine, where does the life of the sun get its manifestation? And here again, we can recognize the kingdom of heaven is within you, or as the Sufi poet addressed, that the universe is within you, or that one recognizes that they are not in duality or in a dual perspective of themselves and creation. They are aware that it's a singular experience and that it's all within me and it's being expressed outward. And so my inward self, my actual being, is then experiencing myself outward. And in that truth, that would make one's consciousness self-aware of itself, that it is only a belief that it needs to consume anything, because its actual true self is the manifester, is the creator, is the one projecting the reality of the sun, of the rain, of the fruits, of the grasslands, and then of the animals that are sentient. And so one would have to cross the river of belief to know that they are not looking at God or creation as an external reality, but as an unfoldment of a reality from within one's being that is then being expressed outward as a manifestation to experience and to express oneself in that reality. And this is the main point of my address pertaining to diet. And what I can share from my own personal experiences is that I grew up in an Italian family where you have two portions of meat, a little pasta and salad, and the flesh consumption is a part of the culture. And in my later life, I became a vegetarian. And then through deeper meditation practices, involved or introduced fasting along with meditation, and also external movements as qigong or tai chi or yoga, to outwardly express my relationship with the light. And not just the light of the sun, but the light of the universe, or the light of God that dwelleth within me and externally. And I share this, and I've created this address to pertain to the future of humanity, because it is my contention that as the consciousness continues to evolve on the planet, as more and more beings awaken to their true nature of who and what they are, and not being a human animal consuming animals, but a divine human experiencing their divinity as a human. And in that state of awareness, it is erroneous to believe that you would have to consume the memory bank of suffering through flesh protein as a means of survival, when you've recognized that you are the omnipresent, omnipotent, immortal self that saints and sages and beings of self-mastery have tried to share with humanity for eons, since recorded documentation. All spiritual lineages can come back upon the voice or the literature of a being steering you inwards back to the deep truth that we are one with all life, that we are the life, that we are the life that's living and breathing, that's manifesting, and that it is us. And so I will bring together this address and just noting that if many of your children or friend or younger people around you are finding that they're wanting to change their diet, or they feel called to change their diet, that they be supported to move to a less gross substance or vibratory belief of what they need to consume, and so that they can gradually move with the planet that is evolving and moving through her own state of consciousness and evolution, so that we may express ourselves once again as divine humans, being upright, light-consuming, divine, light-bearing custodians of this planet in perfect harmony with our environment, with all the animals, with all the kingdoms, and no longer having the elemental kingdoms in fear of us and hiding from us. There's a reason why children don't see fairies anymore. There's a reason why adults don't see the elemental kingdom. And it's because we've moved into such a dense state of consciousness that those realities don't manifest for us anymore. They're hiding behind a veil that is more subtle, that is more benign, that is more divine, that is more feminine, that's more gentle. And they are within this reality as much as we are. And so too are our loved ones and our pets and our domesticated companions. They too are within other realities. But again, it's on a subtle plane that our operating system, our body of experience, and our subtle bodies is not in alignment with those domains, because we are being held in lower states or densities of awareness because of primarily our digestion of what we are putting into our system of operating our consciousness is holding us in a denser frequency or vibration than these other realities. And also too, the purity of our water is a whole nother conversation, that our water is not coming from springs. It's being recycled and then conditioned with chlorine and chemicals and fluoride and things that are not conducive to the nourishment of our body. And that's just a reality of providing water for billions of people on the planet. Everyone is not drinking natural spring water, and that's a whole discussion in and of itself. But our diet it plays a huge part in the ability for us to raise our frequency and to be able to lift ourselves into different bodies of belief, that we can find ourselves in perception and awareness of other realities. And if one is coming from a religious perspective, then one can ask of themselves, well, what do angels eat? And they will quickly realize that angels have transcended, or they're what they perceive as angels, that they've transcended the digestion of food. You could imagine, I use that word, imagine, that beings in higher states of consciousness are not running around looking for chickens, nor are they running around looking for apples or pineapples. That's ridiculous, because angels are the servants of God that have now moved their light body, their light being, into full union, and not two becoming one, but that it is one as one, expressing as one. Just like our finger is expressing itself as a finger on our body, but it's a part of our whole body. It's not separate as a finger. It is a finger of the whole. And this is the way one would view the angelic realm as being the extension of the singular body of Creator. And if one has had any interaction with multidimensional beings from different star systems, you'll recognize very quickly that they too have bodies, and they're comprised of light, just like our body, and they are operating in a different frequency, a different bandwidth. However, they have bodies, and I'm not gonna at this time try and get into the diets of other star systems. However, I can address that as the evolution and the state of consciousness within that reality, within that star system or galaxy has evolved, they too are going to express what I have addressed within this expression, that they will be awakened from within their consciousness in that plane of existence, that they too would be erroneous to be having to take the life of another sentient being in order to provide life for themselves. Because as that consciousness has evolved, it becomes self-aware that it is the consciousness manifesting that reality. And so it's a ridiculous, it then becomes a ridiculous state of that part of that society or that collective consciousness manifesting as millions of beings within a solar system or a galaxy, to then be consuming those denser types of food, and they wouldn't even manifest within that reality. They would stop manifesting as an even available food source, because the beings would never be able to bring themselves to take the life of another. It would be out of the mindset, out of the conscious thinking of the collective. And this is the future for humanity as we evolve into a higher state of being. And that doesn't mean that food is bad or that indulging in food is bad. It's just an address pertaining to the future of evolution, of evolving within the expression and understanding of who we truly are, and who is the driving force behind our mind, behind our body, behind our incarnation, behind our soul's experience, behind the manifestations in the dream states and in this world as a dream field, or a sphere of reality. As the consciousness rises, so too does the awareness of truth within oneself. And I'm sure I've left out many things. It's not easy for me to always address the intercomplexity of these subjects pertaining to consciousness and our interaction with the external that is actually happening internally, and also that if you look at the evolution also in heaven, it exists as a parallel there too, that you'll find that if you're in contact with someone that's transitioned, they will tell you that they're still smoking, or they're still eating pasta, or that they're still consuming food or participating in things that they did on Earth, and then later, as they've evolved in their own evolution, they will tell you that they no longer smoke, they no longer have the desire to eat, or they no longer have the desire for sexual gratification. And again, this is not shame or guilt on any aspects of the human experience. It's bringing attention to the evolution of consciousness, whether in this plane or in another plane. And our reality has been a host for hundreds of thousands of years for a place to incarnate into the denseness of matter, and in many cases forget our divine self and move into a state of consciousness where we are believing that we need flesh protein. We are believing that we need sense gratification through our food and our stimulus of infinite input, and that's part of the human experience. And we've come, many of us, many times from other dimensions and other realities and other planes of existence that don't operate that way. But we come into this plane again as an experience of growth and an experience of exploration back into a different density of reality to then experience those grosser planes. And it's not grosser in a derogatory state, it's grosser in a state of vibratory continuation throughout the multiverse. And Earth would continue that way if we weren't headed towards a planetary ascension. And whether one adapts to planetary ascension or is aware of it is irrelevant. Life in itself is a state of evolving. The only constant in the universe is transformation, is constant transformation. It's the only continuation that's always happening through destruction and rebirth, through the transmutation of one state of form then to another, one state of expression then to another. And our world that we call Earth or Gaia or Terra is on the same it is another extension of the collective oneness that is also on a path of rebirth, transformation, moving from one form to another. And although we've moved through hundreds of thousand years in one state or a transitioning state or a transforming state, there comes these eras of great transformation of the state of that reality where ascension then becomes possible. And you are ascending into your own self. You're not ascending from black to white. You're ascending from light to light, but you're moving through the beliefs and bodies of awareness within the multidimensional infinite reality that we really are. And then we manifest that outward as a new reality. And again, that is why there are millions of highly evolved beings that have come here to participate in the evolution of humanity's consciousness in form as guides of ascension, and the varying degrees of parts to play in that within that scope of roles, and also beings from other planes and dimensions, off-planet cultures that can be perceived as our forefathers and mothers, or our future selves, or descendants or ascendants, but all a part of us, as many of us have spent time you could call it soul experiences or experiences of the spirit that have experienced those realities in different planes and dimensions. And those beings too are here to help in the evolution and the ascension of our world and its inhabitants into a new reality that is of a different vibratory state, a different state of consciousness, a different body of belief, and is a totally different world. It is not this world renewed. It is a new world that is birthed from this world. And many of those beings it's July of 2022, slowly there will be complete disclosure of the interaction between human beings in the upper echelons of government and military that are already in contact with those celestial forces that are here to support the evolution of humanity, and that have participated in the removal of forces that were malevolent to our progression and evolution, and that seeked to hinder and put a halt or a hindrance on the evolution of humanity, so that it could stay in a state of ignorance of its true nature, of the nature of reality, of the nature of our true self. And to leave on a mark here of great importance is that much of the disclosure has to do with entities, forces, and bodies, and institutions, and corporations that actually are in full awareness of what enlightened beings know. They know what enlightened beings know. They know that the population is controlling the reality, and that's why it is and has been a reality that has been manipulated, steered, engineered, and hijacked the consciousness in order to steer it towards an agenda of self-serving, self-appointed leadership over the planet that has been overseen by malevolent forces that they too were in, you could say, an understanding of the custodianship through manipulation of the earth. And that paradigm, although it's evil, also facilitated the many incarnations of being able to come to this reality and experience complete duality, complete forgetfulness, the complete experiences of experiencing hell and suffering and addictions and abuse and violence and all the depths of depravity that are still experienced here on earth today, and also the waterfalls and the blissful music and the camaraderie and the family and food and love and song and dance and worship and religion, all the paths of religion to go back home, and just the vista of all of it. The duality of black and white that has been experienced in this world has been made possible because of the overseen hijack or the overseeing manipulation of holding our consciousness in a state of forgetfulness. Because if those entities didn't exist within this sphere of reality, then we would have already come into full bloom of our true nature, and there would be no suffering, there would be no starvation, there would be no murder, there would be no child trafficking and other depravities that I wish not to speak of. There would be no harvesting of animals and humans for as a state of commodity or barter and trade, which is horrid states of existence. And that is why the unspoken or spoken is that we are and have moved through the cleansing and the purging, and will continue to move through the cleansing and purging of these orders and these overseen powers that have held this collective consciousness in that state of awareness for thousands of hundreds of thousands of years, because again, now we enter into a time of planetary ascension where the consciousness will be quickened by the state of the planet itself. And so the forces incarnate in body and just phased out that will at a later date walk with us and amongst us and help us through this process with the guides that are in form and with the guides that will come and walk with us. to help us through this transitional process that will be of physical body, intellectual understanding, illumination of divine truth, and coming into our own enlightenment of realizing our own self-realization, as every individual will have their own journey home into their own experience of self-realization, that the entire universe is happening within their shared life of oneness. And from that, we will move into ascension, where we will recognize that the life that we experience and witness externally as females and males and children and mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and strangers alike, we will no longer not have to know, but we will recognize that our life is shared and recognized within those other beings. And we will know that our reality is an external expression of who and what we truly are, and then will become a new paradigm of complete joy and beauty and bliss and vibrancy, and the earth will then become a paradise, a haven, and a treasure jewel once more within the cosmos. And it is my utmost honor and pleasure to be with every single one of you that is in my heart and with me, that is in form and that is also not in form, that is hailing from the other star systems that have participated in this process, that have the other beings that have participated from other planes and dimensions, from past adventures and past lives, and our aspects of ourselves that have ascended in previous lives and who are moving back into this reality to help us once again do it again in form. And also, although extremely painful and unpleasurable, and the suffering that is endured for those that have been attacked or held back by the forces that have worked against the ascension and the evolution of this planet, also too there to give thanks, because this energy is what is used as the catalyst, and it's going to be continued into 2023 as the catalyst of awakening. As I've said in other talks, and will state that it's the darkness that shows us the light. It's the trauma. It's part of the human hero's journey that we move through the darkness of ourself. We recognize the darkness around us, and we climb to higher ground. And we're going to do this as a collective race, and we are going to reform this reality into a paradise, and it's going to be glorious. And it is the will of creation, and it's a grand adventure. Many blessings.